And tonight is November 12th, 2019, 7 p.m. I'll call this meeting of the Stowe Board of Selectmen to order. We have a relatively packed crowd. I'm excited to see that. And we will start with any public input on any matters that are not on our agenda. Anybody have anything they want to say? No? Okay. Oh, how could I have gotten started without the town administrator? We were...
I was finishing my cupcake. And there were 8 in front of us.
Chairman's comments, I just have a few things. First of all, I hope everyone remembers that we have a special town meeting this Monday night, November 18th, 7 p.m. at the Hale School. It is a relatively short 9-article warrant, I believe, including our proposed elevator repairs and several articles dealing with PFAS remediation at town building and some of the schools and a few other things. Please remember, special town meeting this coming Monday night. I want to remind everyone, of course, of the Stowe Gobbler on Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving is only two weeks from Thursday, I think. And that is a 5K run walk. We issued the permit for that at our last meeting. It will start at 8 o'clock in the morning on November 28th. Police officers will be along the route to keep traffic open and moving, but please expect delays along 117 near Delaney and Lantern Lane. Please plan ahead. To anyone interested in applying for community preservation funds this year, applications to apply for community preservation funds are now available on the CPC website. CPC is part of the town government, so that's part of stowma.gov. Please use the official CPC forms that can be found there and return them to the town building by December 1st. And just want to remind everyone, the Stowe Police are currently running their November No Shave fundraising event to benefit veterans. Please contact the Stowe Police Department or the Selectmen's Office for details. I think that you can donate. I think they're accepting donations from residents, and I think you can find that on the town website, but I'm not positive about that. Just want to mention that. Now, we do have a set of minutes. We just have the one set?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right. We have minutes from our last meeting of October 24th, 2019, and...
I thought they were good.
Mr. Chairman.
Good to me.
Okay, Mr. Hawks.
I have two corrections, one relatively minor and one which needs explanation.
Maureen, can you hear Mr. Hawks?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
I have, what I'm going to suggest is written out, which I will give you. On page 2, reference to the issuance of the one-day liquor license for Stowe Conservation Trust. It is not noted in there the reasons why that were mentioned at that meeting by Chairman Salvi and myself. I would like to suggest the board's consideration for the following, which I have written out, and if it is moved as part of this, will be given in writing to her. After, on the third line, in italics, after 10:30 p.m., period, we're going to insert the words in parentheses. Chairman Salvi and Selectman Hawks noted their continuing support for SCT, period. However, they both stated their intent to vote in the negative to issue this license due to the fact that the board has yet to adopt a policy regarding issuance of such one-day liquor licenses for events scheduled to be held on town property, close paren. I would like to, if there is no objection, to clarify statements which were made. I think you will concur.
Yeah, I think you just make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Mr. Chairman, I've got one other one.
Yes.
A small one, so we can do it all at once. On the next page, my colleague to my left, well, appreciate this. In the third line, this had to do with the issues going on at Lake Boone on the Hudson side of the lake. It says, in the third line, much used boat launch, period, they. I think they there would, by inference, would refer back to Lake Boone Commission, which is not the case. Who was working on it, and I reported that night, is the Hudson Conservation Commission, who had held a hearing on that. And then just put a period after situation and take out the word since.
And you have these written out, and you'll give them to Maureen.
Well, those you can follow, Maureen. The long one I have written out. If you need, I'll clarify with you afterwards. So, Mr. Chairman, I would move the addition, the approval of the minutes of the meeting of, what date?
October 24th.
October 24th.
October 24th as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of October 24th as amended. Discussion.
24th or 22nd?
22nd.
22nd. Stand
Oh,
correct. Mike.
thing. Okay, 22nd. As amended. Discussion.
It says 24 on here.
Yeah, I know, it's the 22nd. Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, and you'll give your edits to
Yes.
Maureen. Did anybody see anything in the correspondence folder for future agendas? Going once, going twice. Okay, so I'm going to go right now. Well, I have a few minutes. I have a tax classification hearing scheduled for 7:15. And it's a very bad idea to start a hearing before the scheduled time because there might be people who want to be here for that. So, let me ask something. I generally like to know if people are here for things so I can move it up so I don't waste anybody's time. I can guess what a lot of people here are for. The young lady over there, are you? That's what I thought. Are you Karen?
Karen.
Yes.
Bad sign when I'm starting to recognize you. Over here?
We're here for the cultural council to be voted on there.
Great. You know something? And you, sir?
I'm here for the conservation committee.
Are you Andrew?
I am.
Terrific. You know something? Let's go to the appointment to the Cultural Council. Mary Loughton and Debbie Maher.
That's us.
Do you want to come up and join us?
Sure. Oh, very formal. Hello. Hello.
Everyone's
Hello.
We try to be welcoming. Thank you for helping us.
Hi.
Part of the
Hello.
facade that we want.
Oh, okay.
No, we are very welcoming. Is that better?
No, informal, she said.
Very formal, yes.
And so who's who?
So I'm Mary Luton.
Mary Loughton.
Luton.
And I'm Debbie Maher.
Hi, Debbie. And we have your application materials. Thank you very much for stepping forward. Let's start with you, Mary. Do you want to just say something about who you are and why you're interested in the Cultural Council?
Sure. My husband, Toller, and I just moved to Stowe in April. Prior to that, we were taking a vacation from New England and California. That was really nice to avoid the winter. And now we're back. My husband's from Acton. And I'm interested in being involved to get to meet people and be part of the community. This seemed like a great opportunity. I'm interested in arts, science, music. My day jobs is usually working in higher ed. Right now I work at the UMass Medical School with our international students and scholars. So we do a lot of similar programming with having art shows, networking events, cultural events. So this seemed like a great fit.
Great.
Yeah.
And Debbie, how about you?
Well, I've been a resident of Stowe for about almost 5 years, and prior to that was in Maynard, and really got a chance to watch Maynard's artistic community kind of grow. And so I'm a freelance graphic designer at home, so I thought this would be a great way to get involved with the community, get to know more people, and be able to contribute, bring more art to the public arena in Stowe. And prior to being a freelance graphic designer, I worked for several years in big organizations like the New England Aquarium and Earthwatch and stuff, and I did a lot of events there in the science realm with scientists and public people, bringing different stakeholders together, and I miss it. So I thought it would be a really good opportunity to kind of tie it all in together.
Very good. I like what you said about public art. Public art makes people smile.
Yes.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And Mary, I think it's great that somebody who's only been in town pardon the only, since April.
I'm not even fully unpacked yet.
I hope you
I've been here
stay.
25 years and haven't
Comments from members of the board?
Well, it's very nice to see you guys step forward. It's much appreciated, and it's, you know, any chance of you getting Shamu to Stowe?
I'm sorry?
I'm just kind of kidding.
Oh, I couldn't
You know,
hear you.
you work with aquariums and things like that. Can we get Shamu, the whale?
Oh.
Well, they don't have a whale anymore. no.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a dolphin.
All right, maybe
Or
a dolphin.
harbor
Maybe we
porpoise.
can put them like
Let me go to my left.
Yes, I had the honor a couple of years ago of being invited to a program in Maynard, put on by their cultural council, but it involved community. It was almost like a Academy Awards presentation, when they were giving out the awards by the cultural council of the towns. And they got up and gave a presentation about, and we award a grant for $5,000 to the Lake Boone Commission, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
God forbid.
And it was a, pardon the expression, wine and cheese kind of thing at the movie theater, Fine Arts. And I would commend that to you, look into something like that. It's a great way to get cross-fertilization of ideas between the communities.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, I
yeah.
actually attended that too.
You were
It was,
there that night?
It was a joint Stowe and Maynard affair. And
Yes.
Okay.
It was,
Yeah.
it was a fun evening.
That does sound good, yeah.
So
yeah.
with your links to Maynard,
Right,
please, I
yeah.
hope you follow up on that.
Yeah, I will, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for stepping forward, and do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we appoint, as soon as I find the right list, thank you. On the recommendation of the Stowe Cultural Council, I move to appoint Mary Loudon?
Luton.
I beg your pardon.
It's
To the
fine.
Stowe Cultural Council for a 3-year term expiring November 12th, 2022. And on the recommendation of the Stowe Cultural Council, I move to appoint Debbie Meyer of the to the Stowe Cultural Council for a 3-year term expiring the same November 12th, 2022.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to appoint Mary Luton and Debbie Meyer to the Stowe Cultural Council for 3-year terms expiring November 12th, 2022. Further discussion? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very happy.
We're gonna have the vote?
Here. I am preceding that. I'm trying to rush things along.
Maybe like close her eyes.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Say hello to Hector for me.
And you need to see the town clerk to be sworn in.
Okay,
mentioned
so
that.
just come during
At
the
your
day.
early convenience.
During
Okay.
business hours. And I bet I can fit in the appointment to the Conservation Commission before we begin the tax classification hearing. Andrew, do you want to join us?
Thanks for stepping forward.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Andrew.
Hello?
Hello.
Nice to see you again.
You as well.
Thank you for stepping forward
Yes.
to be on the Concom, and we have some materials from Kathy, the Conservation Coordinator, and your letter. Do you want to introduce yourself and say something about?
Sure. Andrew Bass. A lot of what I'm going to say has kind of already been said by Mary and Debbie. Just stepping forward because I've been a resident of the town of Stowe now for 4 years. Currently don't have any children, so most of the time when someone moves into a town, they meet people through the school system. I haven't had that chance just yet, so I thought this would be a great way. Give back to the community. I like getting outside and doing things all times of the year. I know we're heading into the cold time. That doesn't scare me. Yeah, just getting out there, helping with some stuff around the town as well, because I know there are projects that will need help, so just looking forward to stepping up and helping out.
Have you had a chance to go to a Concom meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
I actually have gone through the process as well.
Okay.
My house abuts wetland, so.
Oh, okay. Well, that's right. Okay.
And you still want
Change
this?
Still want to do it.
Exactly.
He's one of our happy conversions, an applicant turned member.
Yeah.
That
and then-
says something, so.
About for us, sure.
Do you want to add anything, Courtney?
Just that, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for stepping up.
Thank you, Andrew. Any discussion?
Just thanks for stepping forward. It's much appreciated.
This town, as you will learn more as you become more acquainted with it, depends heavily on volunteers. such as yourself and those two ladies, and so many more. We couldn't pay folks enough to run this town the way with all the amenities. So you will be part of that fabric. Thank you very much.
You can try to pay me.
Everybody does that.
Mr.
And
Chairman,
do I have
I
a motion?
move to, on the recommendation of the Conservation Commission,
Lead us.
to appoint Andrew Bass to the Conservation Commission for the remainder of a 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2021.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded on the recommendation of the Conservation Commission to appoint Andrew Bass to the Conservation Commission for the remainder of a 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2021. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Andrew, thank you very much. Don't mean to rush you through. I got a huge agenda though,
No
and I
worries.
was hoping to get you by 7:15. I sort of did it. So,
Perfect.
It's really because he's fearful you'll change your mind.
yeah, there is that. And I'm sure on the hook we got to really in.
Not a chance.
Well, thank you.
Have a good rest of your
You
evening.
don't have to leave if you don't want to. You can stay here for the whole meeting. If you want to.
Don't say that. You feel like he has to stay.
He doesn't, you don't have to.
Echo what I said before. See the town clerk as soon as you can to get sworn in.
Will do.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And I think we have Kristen Fox here for the tax collector. And are you going solo here? Sure. All right.
This is the first, my recollection.
Well, Dom usually, so. Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
Now, most of us have been through this
Yeah.
before. Ms. Frasia has not, so I want you to take time, and Ms. Frasia, if you have any questions, or I'll give you priority on this.
I will say I have observed this on a prior televised meeting.
That's almost sad, but
Hope you see that at home, hope you hear that at home.
before you were elected,
No
you were watching
disrespect.
the tax classification hearings. But before we start, I have to. This is a formal hearing, so I need to go through the hearing process. We are opening a hearing on the annual tax classification process. The purpose of the hearing is to allow taxpayers the opportunity to present their views on whether or not residential, commercial, industrial, open space, and personal property should be taxed with one rate for all property classes, or to use different tax rates for different property classes. Notice of the hearing was published in the Stowe Independent on October 23, 2019. I don't need particular names. Is anyone here in particular for this tax classification hearing, so I can make sure you have an opportunity to speak? Don't see anyone here in particular for this. And with that out of the way, Kristen,
Okay.
turn it over to you.
Sure. Does everybody have their packet to follow along?
Yep.
Okay. I just want to remind everybody that any tax rates we discuss tonight are preliminary until approved by the Department of Revenue Division of Local Services. They are subject to change. Hasn't happened to me yet, but you never know. So page 1, if we adopt a residential factor of 1, it would yield a single tax rate of $20.61 per thousand. The formula is there, how we get to that value. It's basically the levy or the amount to be raised divided by the taxable value of the town times 1,000. Chapter 200 of the Acts of 1988 allows Stowe to adopt a factor of less than 1, which would shift more of the tax burden to the CIP classes or properties, which is the commercial, industrial, and personal property class. And historically, Stowe has always chosen a minimum residential factor of 1. Page 2 shows the tax shift in 10% increments. Stowe can shift up to 150% of the burden. And if you look with each incremental shift, it lowers the residential tax rate and raises the commercial, industrial, and personal property tax rate. As you can see, the savings on the residential side is pretty small, and the commercial, industrial, property, personal property tax rate goes up about $2 with every shift. So.
And Kristen, just for
Yep.
those following at home, a factor of 1 means that we are taxing all classes of property the same.
Correct. Everybody pays the same. Yes. All right. The next page shows that the FY20 average single-family value is $495,800. With each 10% shift, the tax rate changes, and you can see the estimated tax bill for the average assessed value on $20.61 is $10,218. And as the tax rate goes down with each shift, the single-family average tax bill also decreases. Minimal decrease, about $100 with each incremental shift. The next page shows the average commercial value is $913,000. I'd like to note that this is down from last year. Last year, the average commercial value was over $1 million. With a drop in the commercial properties, we're now down to $913,000. And as you can see, with each incremental shift, shifting the burden to this class of properties, the average tax bill at 2061 would be $18,817, and with each incremental shift, it goes up about $2,000 for everybody in that class of property. So on the next page again, just to reiterate, a minimum residential factor of 1, estimated tax rate $20.61 per thousand, obviously can change during the DOR approval process.
Thank you, Kristen. So, for those of you who can't see what we're looking at, I think kind of the bottom line is if we shift the factor from 1 to 1.5, which is a fairly heavy burden on the commercial value, the estimated tax bill goes from $18,800 to about $28,200, so just about $10,000.
Right.
But the same thing reduces the average residential tax bill only by about $400 a year. Questions from members of the board?
No, it seems that that would be punitive to shift the burden to commercial properties.
Well, the assessors suggest we maintain a value of 1.
Well, let me say this. Historically, we've been 91% residential. This year, we've crossed the threshold into 92% residential, so the commercial base is getting smaller. So,
Yeah.
And, it's one of the things that, even going back over 20 years, we've always looked at keeping it the same. We were always talking about trying to encourage business to come into town.
right,
And,
single rate is attractive to businesses.
right,
so.
and, I know that years ago, I was told, Bose probably wouldn't have taken over the building on 117 if it had been, taxed at,
Right.
a higher rate, things like that.
Absolutely.
And businesses do appreciate stability, so my vote has always been to keep it the same.
Right.
You have some comparative data from other towns, and really shorthanding this, our neighbors
Yeah.
who are a little more urban may have a shifted tax rate, and those that are more rural like we are, rural suburban like we are, tend to have the same parity rate.
Right.
Let me get comments on my left, and then I'll go to members of the public.
Yes, I concur with Mr. Ryan, and everything that's been said here so far. It surely we always, under the guidance of our town administrator, we hear about our structural deficiencies in tax rate. If we were to move even to 1.1, I think we would start to be counterproductive and discourage people from coming in. We might even lose some people that are here. So I'm certainly staunchly in favor of maintaining factor of 1. I would just ask one question.
Yep.
The tax rate of 2061 projected, subject to change.
Yep.
What was this year's rate for comparison purposes?
2013.
So
So
about-
we've got an increase of 48 cents, approximately 2.3%.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I also want to point out too, when you shift the rate, that the single rate only applies to residential properties. So like I reiterate every year, recreational properties, anyone in chapter 61A or B, those are commercial uses. So those people would pay the higher shift. So it would only pertain to
All the
eventually.
apple orchards and everything.
Yes, yeah, those are not residential
Golf
classes.
courses.
Yeah, golf courses, farms, those are
Thank you.
considered a commercial use. So.
I'll open up to members of the public. I think anybody listening. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't see your hand. Sorry.
I think the chair wants to move us forward, so he wants to shut me up, but I'll
No,
just
no.
be brief. First off, that increase from 91 to 92%, is that a function of fewer commercial properties or more residential properties?
We've had some commercial properties become exempt, things like that. So, and yeah, we've,
How does that happen?
the Collins Museum, you know, things like that. We've had large chunks of commercial value come off the tax rolls, and there's a few more, obviously there's a few more single families, but it's,
And this just reiterates the question I heard from my colleague, Mr. Ryan. Did the Board of Assessors take a vote on keeping the tax rate unsegregated?
no, that's kind of unorthodox. That's strictly a selectman.
Right, but did they
To
make...
recommend.
Technically, we're not supposed to recommend. We're supposed to just put the options on the table and give you enough information to make the decision.
Can't buy it.
Really, Tom always comes in here and tells us...
Yeah,
I was gonna say,
I
no, there's
know,
a bit of
yeah.
a-
I mean, if my personal opinion, I would keep a single tax rate, so,
Well,
just because of the small commercial base and,
I just wanted the board to be on the
yeah,
record too. but
yeah,
I don't disagree.
right.
Mr. Wrigley.
So I will say, as I do annually and have been for over 20 years, when I arrived on the revenue side of the budget equation, and this is a revenue-driven equation, we suffer structurally from the undiversified and unexpanded budget base, but made worse by an diversified and unexpanded tax base. And until or unless those variables or factors change, it would be suicide to do anything different than you're doing. And at some point, not during my tenure, I'm sure, but in the foreseeable future, there's got to be some attempt to expand and diversify the tax base. When I arrived here, it was 87% of the total. So we've lost 5% of our commercial and industrial personal, I mean, in the aggregate, and the trend is going the wrong way with it. Our local aid number is such a small percentage of our total revenues that they could do whatever they wanted to with it, and we have no other revenue sources of significance, hotels, our meal taxes, the rest of it. And so, and we have exempted, a high percentage of exempted and abated properties that are taxable. With those...
Even personal property, businesses go out, come and go, and it affects the numbers, so.
There's such a limit, constraint on our ability to increase our revenues, and in the foreseeable future is going to be solely and increasingly so the burden on the residents. So any thought of doing anything different than we're doing would be...
I think we're all of one mind, but let me go to members of the public. So I think everyone, if you're paying attention, is aware that for a very long time we've had parity of tax rates among all the different real estate classifications, primarily in an attempt to draw more business and to avoid sort of a disproportionate impact on our small existing commercial tax base. Happy to hear a contrary opinion if anybody has one. Happy to hear any opinion if anyone has one on this subject. Anyone? Nothing. Mr. Hawks? Oh, yes, sir.
I'm Bruce Morgan. I'm the chair of the board of assessors.
Bruce is here, I didn't know he
How are
came
you?
I'm
in.
sorry I'm late, but
It's all right, so coming in.
I
Come on, step up.
flew in here. So I've been listening to you for the last
good.
10 or 15 minutes back there. What do you do?
Nice to meet you. Wow.
Hi, Bruce.
Jim. Wow. So,
I thought you looked very attentive there.
I mean, it's all been said very well, including Kristen toeing the line that the board is not supposed to necessarily offer a recommendation, just present the facts. you know.
Can we be confident if you thought we were about to make a mistake, you would say something?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll just say that there's a place in Natick called the Natick Mall. It's a rather substantial commercial property. It was set to go in Framingham. And why did they choose Natick? And it became the Natick Mall? Because Framingham has a split rate and Natick doesn't. And Natick chose to be more commercial friendly, and look at Route 9 in Natick.
They still are.
Yeah, they chose,
Single rate?
they chose to not
Split
not
rate.
go against the commercial businesses, and I think they've, I'm a big fan of not splitting. And it makes no sense for a community like this.
All right, I think, Mr. Hawks, can you?
Just one quick clarification of something Kristen
Yeah.
mentioned, and excuse me for asking. When he asked about the change from 91.90 to that 1% change, you said it was because certain properties had been exempted. The most notable of those, if I heard correctly, was the Collings Museum. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we get the message. Very well done. I will accept the motion.
Mr. Chairman, based on the information from the Board of Assessors, I move the town of Stowe adopt a minimum residential factor of 1 to keep a single tax rate for the fiscal year of 2020, taxing all property classes at one rate.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to keep a single tax rate of 1, taxing all property classes at 1 rate. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
I've got one here.
Let's take a moment to sign this.
I don't
Put it in the file, but,
Sometimes it's slow and sometimes it's, they've got a big agenda, so they're kind of rushing. I didn't even go through my whole packet.
All right, thank you.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. And now, Kristen at least is doing double duty. Bruce, are you staying here with her?
Yes.
Great.
yes.
Allison, do you want to join? Sure. So this item, actually, Mr. Burke suggested this to me a while ago, and then by coincidence, Ms. Fox sent me something in connection with an MMA meeting that set forth various tax breaks for seniors, and we thought we would take a little bit of time at a meeting to discuss the various ways that seniors can get a break on their property taxes.
Sure.
Who would like to start off? Kristen?
Sure.
Okay.
So you all got a copy of the FY20 matrix, which shows all the personal exemptions that the town of Stowe offers.
I did not receive that. Thank you.
So every year, the assessor's office updates this to add things like cost of living adjustment, Social Security deductions, asset and income limits. And the programs that we have for the seniors, the first one is something called 17D. It's for people aged 70 and older. There is no income limit. However, there is an asset limit this year of $42,353, and the benefit range is anywhere from $185 to $370. I would like to point out that the statutory exemption, the amount that the state recommends is $175. However, at the May 2018 town meeting, I had some articles that were passed to double the base amount of all exemptions that Stowe offers, and also to add the cost of living adjustment to the exemption amount for 17D and the cost of living to the income and asset amounts for 41C. And those articles were passed, and they were passed for fiscal 19 and all future fiscal years. So, yeah. Oh, sure. Sorry. So we give a little more than what we have to give, basically, because these amounts are so small that $175 is not much off of your taxes. Clause 41C, this exemption, you have to be 65 or older to qualify. There are income and asset limits for whether you're single or whether you're married, about $21,000 if you're single, married $31,765, and then the asset limits are for single persons $42,353 and married persons $58,235. This exemption ranges anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. Again, the statutory amount is $500. Stowe has doubled the exemption amounts for all exemptions. We've also further, just specifically have doubled 41C, which allows people to get up to $2,000 a year.
Mr. Chairman, clarification.
Mr. Hawes.
How do you define assets as you're using the term?
Assets are stocks, bonds,
Not the value of your home.
not the value of your home. They exclude the value of your home and cemetery plots.
Thank you.
So these are the articles that at the annual town meeting we routinely vote to increase by 100%.
Correct. We no longer do that because we've done it for all future fiscal years
Okay.
in May 2018. We do offer a 41A tax deferral for seniors, people 65 and older. There's an income limit of $40,000 a year. You can defer up to 50% of the assessed value of your home until the house is sold or the homeowner passes away. And the town is paid back upon the death or the sale of the home. Interest accrues at a rate of 4% annually. There's a lien placed on the property to ensure that the town receives payment. The other option is the tax work-off program, which Allison is in charge of. Ages 60 plus, you have to be a resident of Stowe. There's an income limit of one person, $79,310, two people, $90,640. Stowe seniors can do various jobs for different departments in the town and earn up to $1,500 a year off of their taxes.
Why don't we let Allison just...
Well, I just want to mention that currently we've had 18 participants this past year, and the maximum is 24.
Okay.
We've never met the maximum, but we've had an agreement if we ever had
Right.
reached the maximum that I could go to the Assessor's Board and request additional openings.
Do we typically hover around 18 or is that high?
It's really fluctuated through the years. We've had up to 20,
Okay.
but some years it's only 12.
Okay,
So
but people
really-
take advantage of it every year.
They do.
Okay.
Yep, and we're constantly trying to educate people. In the past, we've had the assessors come in and have talks at the senior center about what is available to them, and then we put it in our newsletter. So we're trying to get the word out so people are aware.
Mr. Hawes.
Just, could it be on an article, perhaps a very basic summary in local paper as well? I've been hearing some
Sure.
direct requests for assistance on this and people throwing up their hands. And I think if they were made aware of some of these programs through your good offices,
Okay.
it
So,
would greatly help.
Let's let Kristen get through everything
Yeah,
and
sorry.
then actually we can focus on how to make information available.
Yeah.
Sure.
The next exemption is the community preservation surcharge. Everybody in town is charged a 3% additional surcharge on their taxes, which goes into the CPC fund. There are, there's a table here that shows the income limits, basically. I don't know if these are income or asset limits. Income. And that's a full CPA exemption, so whatever you're charged on your tax bill, if you qualify, the entire exemption gets exempted for you.
But that's an annual look.
All of these are annual.
Thank you.
Yes, you have to reapply for all of the personal exemptions every year. And then there's the circuit breaker credit, which is a credit on your income taxes. For 2018, the credit is $1,100.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the Council on Aging has AARP come out and do free tax preparation between February and April, and they will do the circuit breaker to help the seniors to make sure they get it. So I have a lot of seniors that will say, I don't even bother doing my income tax return, I don't make enough money, I don't need to file. I said, but you should file, because just file for this purpose, and you get $1,100.
Okay.
So, but we offer that free of charge at the COA.
Right.
Anyone can come in and get their taxes prepared. Right.
And then that is it for strictly seniors, because now we're back to 17D, which is also for minors, and it's for widows and widowers. And then we have also our blind exemptions, we have our veterans exemptions. So this matrix lists all of them, not just the Stowe senior ones.
Is this matrix on the website? then?
Yes.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
And where on the website?
It's on the assessor's page. I don't know if, have you put this on your page, this matrix?
I'll have to check with Gigi, because
Okay.
but I'll make sure
okay.
it gets on.
Yeah, okay.
So if I'm a senior
Mm-hmm.
watching this at home,
Yeah,
and I think this sounds interesting, but I can't quite follow all this stuff,
sure.
I can look it up on the website,
Yeah.
but
You can
if I
call,
wanna
come
talk,
in, yeah.
and who would
absolutely.
I call?
The assessor's office. Kelly
You-
Sozik, our assistant assessor, handles all the personal exemptions. She
Okay.
knows all the rules on all of them. She's really good at helping people figure out which one they qualify for.
And I know your phone number is on the website, but can you say it?
Yes, 978-897-4597.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kelly Sozik.
Kelly Sozik is the assistant assessor,
Okay.
yeah. But anyone in the office could help, so
Yeah.
our clerk could help, myself could help.
And you've included,
Mm-hmm.
well, Alice, did you have anything you want to add at this point?
No.
There's something interesting here from the town of Harvard, a voluntary, I don't know who put this in here, who would like to,
We put that in there because Georgie Smith, one of our board members, had heard about it and was very interested in it and wanted to know if it's something that Stowe could possibly implement. And basically what it is they've created something called an Elderly and Disabled Taxation Fund. It's a voluntary fund. There's a little card that goes in, like a mailer with the tax bills, and it allows people to donate money to the fund. And it goes into the Elderly and Disabled Taxation Fund. There's an Elderly and Disabled Taxation Fund Committee that has an application process that basically distributes the funds to those people that are in need.
so this is not like on the federal taxes, the presidential checkoff where it does not increase your taxes. This is something above
Strictly
what you owe.
donation, yeah, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr., well, let me start over here. Any comments?
Well, I see that in order to implement that, we would be required to establish the fund and establish a committee to distribute the money. I think this could bear further discussion on an agenda.
Mr. Ryan?
It's worth looking into further, see how it works.
Mr. Hawks?
Same vein, does it require town meeting adoption?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think there's a similar statute with respect to education. For those who want to donate additional money specifically for educational purposes, you can, it's a local acceptance statute as this one is.
Mr. Burke?
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I would like to see some more research fleshing this out, especially how much Harvard manages to put away or socked away in that.
My clerk lives in Harvard, and she said there's usually no more than about $20,000 in it at any given time. So it just depends, you know,
Be interesting
how
to,
generous people are feeling, so.
yes, and it'd be interesting to see that, and also maybe promote the fund rather than just slip it in your tax bills. But that's a discussion, I agree with my colleagues, for another day. But I want to thank you all for coming in and discussing these property tax exemptions. They're very important. I appreciate you getting the word out. And I also appreciate the chair for listening to me on this. Although I'm still stunned, I do appreciate him putting this on.
Can't keep on about it.
I'm stunned too. I'm stunned too. So Maureen, let's pencil this in for the first meeting in January. There's only really one meeting between now and the end of the year that's going to be at all substantive. Let's put this on with the goal of maybe, Bill, maybe you and Maureen could figure out what statutes it would have to accept, and with the idea of drafting a warrant article for annual town meeting.
The COA director in Harvard is the one that runs is kind of in charge of the fund. and
So
the
you're
program.
suggesting we put Allison in charge of drafting this thing? Okay, that's a
I'll
very good
second that
idea.
motion.
Yeah, it's a very good
I think I heard my
idea.
name mentioned.
I'm
I
surprised-
just, as the
I'm surprised I didn't think of
assessor,
that.
I don't want to get involved with discretionary funds,
Right,
so, yeah.
understood.
I'm
Yeah.
happy to help.
Okay,
Allison,
so
no, seriously,
draft the
Allison,
warrant.
could you, yeah, for the first meeting in January, and I'll work with you on it, just, you know,
Well,
a site.
fortunately, I know the COA director in Harvard
There you
very
go.
well, so I'm going to call her up, say, just,
So maybe
Send me
just,
over
you know,
what-
start thinking about what the language for the warrant article would look like. I know Brian always likes to look at whatever statute originates this, as do I.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And anything, Ms. Frisha, Mr. Ryan, Mr. Hawks?
By your leave, Mr. Chairman, could that be expanded to opportunities for, especially on the day after Veterans Day, might be a good opportunity to have the Veterans Service Officer come in and explain some of the programs that are available.
We can do that.
Means tested, I think that would help the overall
It's
cost.
probably past time to meet with the Veteran Service
Mr.
Officer.
Jacobs, Joe Jacobs.
Mr. Burke?
Just briefly, I want to echo my colleague, Mr. Hawks's recommendation that perhaps this is a fitting subject for a press release in the Stowe Independent, and that perhaps we can talk about that at our Council on Aging meeting on Thursday.
Sure.
All right.
Get the word out.
Okay, that was very helpful. You know, and really all I think we wanted to do was kind of get the word out about some of the programs that people may not have heard about, and let them know that there's information on the website and who they can call.
Yep.
So I think we've done that, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Allison's walking away with an assignment, so she's thrilled.
That's why
She's wondering why she showed up tonight.
Thank you, Allison, especially. All right, thank you, that was good. Thank you, Mr. Burke, for suggesting that. So we have a series of appointments now. Bill and Dot, I assume you're here for the Gleasondale thing? Okay, I can't move that up because I got to wait for Jesse and/or Valerie. Craig, why are you here? Always a pleasure to see you, of course. Are you here for the warrant?
in the elderly tax.
Yeah, Okay. Oh, okay, okay.
Go home.
All right, I'm just trying to move people along, be polite to people. We'll start taking up the various appointments that we have. And, well, the first one on our agenda is the appointment of the full-time Dispatcher-Gabriel Lopez, but I don't think this can be separated from the next item, the promotion of Jon Butler and the temporary assignment to the police academy.
I mean, you
Mr.
could if
Town-
you wanted to, but if the agenda's, if
Right.
you're worried about what the agenda says.
Mr. Town Administrator, do you want to talk to us about this?
So, the full-time dispatcher, Gabriel Lopez, is being recommended to fill Jon Butler's, which we'll talk about in a minute. So, full-time dispatcher from Hudson, currently working in Hudson, to come here. And we need to fill that if you were to approve our recommendation, police chiefs in mind, on the Jon Butler appointment, which is, we've never done it since I've been here, what I'm going to propose to you. It had been done in the late 80s, and other communities finding themselves in the same circumstance we find ourselves, i.e. difficulty in filling police officer positions with the requirement that they have, which has been our minimum requirement, have graduated from the academy, be a full-time officer with at least 1 year's minimal experience. And both of those have become difficult to achieve nowadays, in part because other communities are feeling the same pressure we are, and they're doing what I'm proposing we do to protect their own. And so Jon Butler, as my activities report explains, has been working for us for 15 years. I've had many instances to observe his work. I've seen his written work. He's respected professionally and personally throughout that department. He, as a full-time dispatcher, part-time special, so he works for us. He's fully qualified to take the road. He has arrest powers, carry certified weapon. Matter of fact, he's our weapons instructor and he's our armorer, and that is a term. But other tasks that others may shy away from, John's taken. And he entered the profession as a dispatcher with the aspirations to become a full-time police officer, as is the case with most dispatchers. Life intercedes, marriage, other commitments, bills, and with our requirement that you be fully academy trained on your own, and then having to have had minimally 1 year on the ground, boots on the ground, it's getting increasingly difficult, almost impossible. We've had to go out twice on a couple. And so what I'm proposing and recommending to the board, and you are the appointing authority because we have what's called statutorily the chiefs, so all appointments, including the dispatchers, but John's, must be yours. So I'm recommending that appointment. I believe you've seen the chief's recommendation and the details that are in there about John. So we were able to get a waiver from the state certification board. And again, that provision is there because of the difficulties, increasing difficulties that people are having in getting qualified folks. We have 270 days. It was sent in by Chief Bosworth shortly before he left, the beginning of August. Came back, approved meaning 270 days that we can take somebody, put them on the front line without that full of academy training, and to operate if they meet the other qualifications, which John does. And during that 270 days, he'll be getting paid as a police officer, functioning as a police officer. And I haven't confirmed this, but we're attempting to enter him in the late February class, which is the next one available. It's 24 weeks. We'll get all of but 8 of those weeks in this fiscal year, and it's fortuitous for us because we have the money this year. We've had some vacancies and openings we haven't filled. We haven't backfilled lieutenant, for example. The amount of money that the current chief is making is less than the previous chief. We've got grants. We've got other things that are going to allow us to fully fund that 20-week period till the end of this fiscal year without overtime and such. So it's a window opening that's narrow, but it happens at the time that we need to fill. And so that's our recommendation. John goes. Now he has to pass the academy. We will be paying him for training as we pay all officers for training. This happens to be an extended one called the academy, but that's what the other departments are doing with it. It's legitimate, it's appropriate. In our case, it's to our advantage, which is the most important thing. And then he comes out. This would be a temporary appointment, subject to and contingent upon graduating from the academy. He comes back, and then you appoint him as a, then he'll be subject to all the rules and regs under the CBA and statutory requirements.
So 2 questions, and then I want to say something about John. First question, I just want to make sure I understand correctly, and I think I do. So the usual model of hiring an officer is that somebody who wants to be a police officer, they go to the police academy on their own time, I guess. And then they start making applications to police departments to become an officer. Here we have a situation.
That's our model.
That's our model.
Different ones have been doing for years what we're proposing.
Here we have someone who has already started their career, who is already working for us, who obviously can't afford to take the time without pay to go to the academy. So we're helping them do that, knowing that we're going to get a more senior officer. Is that roughly correct?
Correct.
The only thing I saw here, I'm in favor of it, and I want to say something about John, but what if, and I know it isn't going to happen, but what if John goes to the academy and doesn't pass, comes back and wants to be a dispatcher? We're hiring a full-time dispatcher.
Yes, and we've informed the dispatch we've just hired of that possible outcome.
Okay.
We were transparent with that person.
Okay.
And could I just, one other,
Yeah.
I think, important factor here is that John is paying for the academy. You know, it's my feeling that we're extending ourselves financially for John because he deserves it. At the same time, I asked whether he would agree to, and he said yes, to pay the $3,000 for the academy. And many communities do pay for both.
So
It shows John's commitment, which is what I was looking for, you know, how he's very serious and wants to become a full-time officer quite.
So I met
Strong.
Officer Butler in the Citizens Police Academy, which is one of the great reasons to do the Citizens Police Academy is you actually get to know some of the officers. I'm surprised, he struck me as one of the more senior and experienced and learned officers. He travels and lectures, I thought, on firearms. He was the one who did the weapons training, and yes, there's weapons training in the Stowe Citizens Police Academy. He led the exercise on the mock traffic stop where the students have to go up to a car and, you know, ask what's going on and give a ticket, and it quickly goes south. Very experienced officer, I thought, very good teacher. It seems to enjoy teaching. I was actually surprised to find out he hadn't gone to the police academy. He seemed like I would have been, I would not have been surprised to hear that he was teaching in the police academy. So
One of the things is, he has gone to a police academy, but it's a part-time academy.
okay.
So, you know, it's one of the things, I had a long conversation with Chief Marino about this. I probably talked to him for about half an hour or longer. And at first I was a little concerned. And then the more I found out about it, you know, that he is doing patrols currently. He has police academy training, just not the one that we require, you know, the full-blown one. He's our weapons instructor, he's our armorer, and, you know, what you're saying is just reinforcing everything else that Chief Marino told me about, as well as, you know, him being very well respected, and you know, he's going to probably do a bang-up job for us. He's got a lot invested in town, and you know, I think, you know, it's one of these things that I definitely think he's worth putting through this.
Ms. Fraser.
I'm delighted we have this opportunity.
Mr. Burke.
After hearing from the town administrator and my colleagues, Mr. Salvi and Mr. Ryan, I'm prepared to move forward. I also think I know where we can find the next candidate for Stowe Police. Yeah. When it comes up.
I think Officer Butler would tell you that I violated at least 4 civil rights during my mock traffic stop.
He'll overlook that.
As long as you didn't shoot anybody.
I don't think I shot anybody, but Mr. Hawks.
This is certainly nothing personal, just a process question. Our investment, the town's investment in this is approximately a half a year's salary at the appropriate step, which comes out to 27,000, 30,000, something in that range.
He's going to be put at step 1 as the
What's the
police
dollar?
officer. The dollar exposure for us is 25 and change.
25. My question is, suppose for some totally unforeseen reason, he is not able to take that position on. Use a federal term, is there any clawback provision? I mean, we've invested 25,000 and
I chose not to put such in there. It is the case, we could set any condition we wish to. My own feeling about it is that, to use that term, not my term but yours, clawback. My feeling is this, that A, it would discourage the risk management, which is part of this, right? So you're telling middle-aged man with a family and the rest of it that we want our money back, for example, if it fails. I think you discourage somebody from taking that risk, and I'd rather us, who have the entity that has the ability and capacity to take on that risk, knowing full well that if it fails, yep, we're out some money. But he's going to remain working for us, and on a cost benefit, I chose not to lay that. I asked for payment of the academy, and he provided it, and that was all I asked for.
thank you.
Mr. Burke and then Ms. Fraser. Mr. Burke.
I agree with the town administrator. He's willing to stake his finances and his financial resources on this prospect. We should be as well. And If he doesn't make it, Mr. Salvi can step right in.
That's comforting.
Yeah,
Sure,
we'll
every
send
town
you-
is comforted by that.
We'll end up having to send you to the academy.
Right.
though.
Ms. Fraser.
But you can put the bill yourself. I would just add that if we are willing to stake our, some money to support his attending the academy, that it creates an opportunity for us to also support, as a town or as the department or whoever could do this, to support him in his efforts and make sure that he succeeds.
Yeah, I don't have a problem paying somebody to go to a clearly work-related training.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to condition the salary on successful graduation. I think he's sufficiently motivated, and that's all you can ask for.
Yeah.
I would add two other comments. One is with regard to the probability of success here. I met with him several times. He has a trainer. I've looked at what the requirements are for the PT test to pass. I know what his results are. He's been training very hard, and I'm comfortable. That was my concern at his age, was the PT test. He's going to pass the written exams, all of those teachings and studies that relate to probable cause, reasonable suspicion, all of those terms. He's good. I was worried at his age about the PT test, but I've seen his progress and I've been monitoring it with his results from his trainer, who's an ex-Marine, he's putting his reputation on the line. I'll put mine on the line.
Yeah.
And we'll see him through. The last thing I would say is, I've had him do. I recently had him undertake a large investigation for us, and I will say this, that. And I don't ask that frequently. Police reports and other things, and I get summaries back, but this was something that needed more detail. John took it on, and I will say this to you. No one's ever done a better job down there. Not even close. Thorough, thoughtful. Thought beyond the obvious, initiated his own leads on some matters, and I was impressed.
All right, do I have a motion? I think we all understand this sufficiently.
So, matter of process, would you like the promotion of the special police officer?
I think the promotion for Officer Butler first, and then the appointment of the dispatcher.
Right, so on the recommendation of the police chief, I move to promote Jonathan Butler from special police officer to police officer for the town of Stowe, effective immediately and until February 24th, when he enters the police academy.
Second.
Motion made and seconded on the recommendation of the police chief to promote Jonathan Butler from special police officer to police officer, effective immediately until February 24th, when he enters the police academy. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. If we have another motion.
Could I
Mr.
just ask?
Yes.
Friendly amendment. They have multiple ones coming up. I'm not certain they've cleared a space for them there. Could we add, or
Next
such time as the next academy that he can get access to?
I'll make that friendly amendment.
Accepted.
And we'll revote that friendly amendment, so it just when he enters the next available police academy class. All those in favor, signify by saying.
Just suppose there's a larger gap than you anticipate and the 270 days runs out, what happens then?
Well,
We'll have to reappoint.
he's only got 270 days. He'll have to come back off the.
Okay.
There's nothing that isn't reversible.
All those in favor of the amended motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll make sure the minutes reflect that accurately. Do I have another motion, Ms. Fresha?
You do. On the recommendation of the police chief, I move to appoint Gabriel Lopez as full-time dispatcher for the town of Stowe, effective immediately for the remainder of a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2020, subject to reappointment at that time.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Gabriel Lopez as a full-time dispatcher, effective immediately for the remainder of the one-year term expiring June 30th, 2020, and subject to reappointment at that time. Further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I've seen this, the materials in the packet regarding this candidate. I just want to know if Mr. Ryan has anything to add.
No, it's, when I talked to Chief Marino, he said that he was, great candidate, and there was nothing bad to be said about him. Fully trained up on the same equipment we use, and he's been doing it for over a year, and so, good to go.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. Oops. Is that yours? All right, thank you. And I'm going to take things a little out of order to try to clear people out from the room, which is getting hotter by the moment.
Thank God.
Yeah, I know,
Nice.
compared to the
Don't complain.
alternative. Karen, do you want to? Yes. Sorry.
Finally.
I probably should have taken you before the appointment. Sorry about that.
All right.
And Karen is here to talk about the permit for the holiday tree lighting, tentatively scheduled for December 7th and a rain date on December 14th. You want to?
Yes, so I've been in touch with Sergeant Solis, and he put together a traffic safety plan, right, and submitted ahead of time. Hopefully you guys
Yes, we
received it.
have.
Okay. So we're looking for a permit for the Stowe Lower Common for Saturday, December 7th, from 7 to approximately 8:30. Any other information that you'll need?
No,
We're
now
gonna-
you've done this for, I think, 3.
This is the third.
3 or 4.
Third,
Yeah.
probably.
So it's December 7th, 7 p.m., rain date of Saturday, December 14th?
Yes.
Okay. My only concern, and the planning board has said it's okay, is will it be in shape? Will there be enough room for people to be there for it, considering everything that's going on down there? And you've received assurances that it will?
I have received some assurances that
Okay.
I'm going to get updates, but I believe it should be, yes.
I mean, it's starting to get kind of finalized down there.
Yeah.
So, wait a minute. Any comments from my left?
No, I just think it's a great thing.
And we have Representative Kate Hogan, who will be
Oh, good.
emceeing this year.
Okay. Mr. Hawks?
I drove by there 1 o'clock this afternoon, and they were spreading hay where the giant dirt pile had been. Tremendous progress on cleanup of that down there. And really, our experience, I was fortunate enough to be involved with Karen's initial foray into this. And functionally, all of the activity is right around the tree, which is furthest away from the disturbed area. So I have full faith that it will be usable, just from my own background.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Burke?
Just want to thank you all, my colleague, Mr. Fox, especially you, Karen, for doing this every year. It's a wonderful addition to our Stowe cultural scene, and I hope everyone who can make it on December 7th does make it. It's a lot of fun.
Doing marshmallows again?
We are.
Do I have a motion?
You do. I move to permit Karen Stamps and other volunteers to use the Lower Common for a holiday tree lighting on Saturday, December 7th, 2019, from 7 to 8:30, is that said?
Yep.
With the rain date of December 14th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to, I should have reviewed along with this, to permit Karen Stams and other volunteers to use the Lower Common for a holiday tree lighting on Saturday, December 7th, 2019, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Is that what you said?
I said 7,
Well,
based on...
I think
her
based
comment.
on,
From 7,
that's more accurate because of the setting up
which is more accurate?
yours.
6:30.
Yes.
Do you want to, is that a friendly amendment to your
It
motion?
sure is.
And whoever seconded it, okay. From 6:30 to 8 p.m. with a rain date of December 14th. Further discussion?
Just a quick clarification, the highway department had provided the temporary lighting
Yes.
before, is that part of your?
Yep, they're all involved.
Okay,
and
that's all, thank you.
Thank you very much for doing
No
this.
problem.
Really appreciate it.
It's
All those in
the
favor?
same plan as last
Please
year.
signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. Pray for good weather.
Best of Travis Lane.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a PG mind now, Dan, that I can do that.
Oh, you're on record.
So I see the assistant town planner lurking in the doorway. Are you prepared to talk about the Gleasondale?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll take that up. Do you want to summarize this for us, Valerie? Come on up.
How are you doing, Brian?
Yeah.
All right, we're being started on.
Yes.
Hello.
Good day.
Okay.
What was your name again?
Very formal group.
How are you?
Just trying to be welcoming.
That was nice.
You should
Every
be
time?
scared at this moment.
Yeah, that's a little intimidating. That's a power move right there.
I don't even know what a power move is. That's what you just practiced one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yes, so I'm here on behalf of the Gleasondale Neighborhood Subcommittee, asking for the board to vote to create a local historic district study committee. So the Gleasondale Subcommittee has been working for the past 2 years, researching, surveying residents, looking up the most effective strategies for historic preservation and ways of preserving their neighborhood integrity. And they've decided that the best way for them to do that would be through a local historic district that's able to be customized to whatever items that they wish to regulate. So a vote tonight would mean that a study committee is formed. This is a group of up to 7 people who would begin to work on the process. So the study committee itself is not necessarily a vote saying that we will have a local historic district. It's simply the first step in a process that's laid out by the Mass General laws.
So, thank you. 2 questions. One is purely ministerial. I see that by this complicated statute, to appoint this study committee, you first have to basically invite 2 organizations, the American Institute of Architects and the Board of Realtors.
As well as the Stowe Historical Society.
Right,
Yeah.
but the other 2 are harder to find. And in your memo, you say the Board of Selectmen has to solicit it. Technically, we don't have, our staff doesn't have to solicit it, but could you provide Maureen
Of course.
with some contacts?
Yes. So we've
Okay.
spoken with Chris Skelly of Mass Historic, and so he's able to provide the contacts at the Institute of Architects and the Board of Realtors
Okay.
for us to, we can work with your staff too on
Okay.
the template letter and
Okay.
getting all that out.
So then the other question is more substantive, and I know this is just a study committee, and that's how the process starts, and that's always a good idea. And I also know that a historic district ultimately has to be approved by town meeting.
Yes.
These are often not non-controversial. My experience with them has been in litigation, and there's good and there's bad, right? What is the rationale for Gleasondale in particular, if it's gotten that far?
Sure, yeah. So right now, the group is understanding, now they're able to see the historic inventory that's been done for the entire town. We're able to see exactly which structures and buildings and areas in Gleasondale are historic. So there are already inventories done of all of these properties. So we're able to see the historic value there. And certainly it's not without controversy, but I do know that this is very much led by the residents.
Yeah.
So the residents have been very involved in a survey just this last August and September. They were going door to door with a list of items that could be regulated in a local historic district, and just discussing this with their neighbors about what elements they might want to regulate, what they might want to provide design guidelines for, and what they might not want to touch at all.
Okay, so they seem to be aware that it involves another layer of regulation over
Yes.
things like shutters and colors and...
If they choose.
If they
So
choose.
far, it sounds like they do not wish to talk about paint color.
Okay.
But there are other items that you might see from the public way that they would be able to regulate.
Okay.
But again, that's all based on what we get back from surveys, what residents
Right.
seem to want to include.
Is the planning board recommending that we go down this road?
Yes, both the planning board and the historical commission have voted in favor of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions from members of the board, and I will ask members of the public in a minute. Let me start on my right. Any questions,
Don't have
comments?
questions yet.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things, so I'm kind of on the same line as what Jim was mentioning as far as it being controversial. You know, I grew up on the South Shore, and there was litigation going on in Hingham on a regular basis, you know, over paint colors and everything else. And I suppose one of my concerns would be is, you know, if somebody's proposed, you know, if you're setting up a district, can somebody just opt out of it? And say, I don't want to be involved.
It is possible. That's definitely a conversation for the neighbors to start having. A local historic district can actually be made just for one structure itself. So you can, part of the process with the committee that would be formed would be defining the boundary. So that's one of the first steps. And then after that, when they start discussing this more with the individual landowners, there could be someone who wants to opt out entirely, and that's going to be a decision for the committee and the neighborhood to decide. Yeah.
Because I suppose one of my other concerns would be is, you know, let's say there were 40% of the folks that lived down there that did want one and 60% that didn't.
Right.
I would hope it wouldn't make it to town meeting, but town meeting could potentially impose the district on the folks down there without their consent, potentially. I'm assuming it probably would not happen.
That is possible, but this is, it is very much driven by members of the village, so I don't know if anyone here wants to speak to.
Let me finish with members of the board. Mr. Burke.
Yeah, I see the point that my colleagues, Mr. Ryan and Mr. Salvi, are getting at. The bottom line is that this is a very active and committed neighborhood, and it's hard to tell them not to work on things that they want to work on. But this is just a study committee, any regulations or any guidelines they would seek to impose would first have to, I imagine, come before us for placement on the town warrant, and then they would have to be voted by the town meeting. Would they be considered bylaws or zoning requirements, therefore requiring a 2/3 vote?
Yes. Yep, they would require the 2/3 vote.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned based upon that, and the fact that I just don't want to discourage those people down there who seem to be coalescing around their neighborhood in such a positive way.
Yeah, and I don't have I'm not making a negative point about it. I want to make sure that they know what they're getting into, or at least potentially what they're getting into. And I admit my only experience with historic districts has been in the context of fights. For all I know, for every one that I came in contact with, which was probably a grand total of 5, there were 20 that are just happily going along, preserving stuff with no disputes. Mr. Hawks.
No, I fully support this because I would hope that there would be, in the usual fine practice of the planning department and the ancillary groups, that there would be ample opportunity for public input to develop this from the ground up rather than from the top down, as is your practice. And I fully support it, and I particularly appreciate your very cogent presentation. Thank you.
Let's open it up. Any members of the public want to be heard on this?
Yes, I did. Yeah, you can speak more if you want.
Todd? Why don't you say your name and your address for the...
Todd Spalding, the Historical Commission. And I grew up down in Gleasondale, and it's nice to see that the group of people down there is going together, and everyone seems pleased with this idea. I've spoken to a number of people, and all of them seem to be enthusiastic about it. I think it's probably a good thing to happen down there, and it'd be nice to get that little village set aside, and there are a number of different things that can happen that make everybody happy, I think, without there being a big disgruntle about paint colors and things.
Okay.
There's a number of places that has happened, and the Historical Commission has looked up a number of them, so it could be a good idea.
Okay.
Go forward with this.
Thank you, Doc. Anybody else? I see a nudge going on there, Bill.
Go on, Bill, shut up, say your name and say your piece.
Howard Byron, 469 Gleasondale Road. This has come before the town in the past and got to town meeting and was voted down. At that time, thankfully, because that would have imposed, the movement at that time, I'm pretty sure, would have imposed many restrictions. If I have asked a previous Gleasondale committee what they really wanted, did they want a historic district, or did they just want some recognition for the fact that it is a historical area as an old mill town? I don't know the full answer came forward on that question. But it'll be worked out. This is a study committee. I'm sure it'll be worked out if there's any agreement to go forward with it. I don't think we want a lot of restrictions, and if we can create a district which just has to be restricted in some way to the minimum, that it might be workable.
Okay.
And to have the area recognized for what it is. It's an old mill village. Many of the dwellings were built by the mill for the workers. So there's history to that. And as long as it remains more or less of a exterior street view kind of thing, and maybe some signs that tells people what they're entering, which I've looked into in the past and had a mock-up done by another friend in town and didn't move forward with it.
Okay. So you're in favor for now?
Yes,
Okay.
I see.
Devil's in the details.
Anybody else? Ev? Did anybody else want to have anything to say?
I'm sorry to be late.
Give your name and address.
So my name is Ev Fisher, and I live at 6 Sudbury Road. And so this started when there was the charrette. Professor Mullins suggested that it would be a good idea to explore some kind of a historic district. So the survey we just did is exactly that, to get the citizens' input, and that's all it is.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Do I have a motion?
You do. So on the recommendation of the Planning Department and the Historical Commission, I move to establish under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 40C, General Laws, Local Historic District Study Committee for Gleasondale, composed of 3 to 7 members, which shall make an investigation and report on the historic significance of buildings, structures, features, sites, or surroundings included in such proposed local historic district or districts, as the committee may recommend, and shall submit a final report with its recommendations after a public hearing, together with a map of the proposed district or districts and a draft of the proposed bylaw to town meeting.
I'm going to interrupt Ms. Frisha. I think we're supposed to decide between 3 and 7.
Okay.
I was going to suggest that.
It's really up, it's up to you. So each
Well,
of
if
the,
we're going to be establishing a committee, we
Needs a number.
It needs a number, and I'm just going to suggest, just throw out there, that we probably want as many people as possible to make it as representative as possible to address the concerns of Mr. Byron. So let's go with 7. How's that sound?
7 works for me.
7 works.
Yes.
So
That's a number.
why don't we consider that a friendly amendment to the first paragraph, and Ms. Fraser will continue with the rest of it.
Once a vote to create a study committee has been approved, the Board of Selectmen is required to solicit nominations for a 7-member committee. 1 member out of 2 nominees submitted by the following organizations must be appointed to the study committee by the Selectmen, provided that the nominations are provided to the town within 30 days of the request. So the organizations are American Institute of Architects, the Board of Realtors, and the Stowe Historical Society. In the event that the monitoring organizations do not supply nominees, or if there is additional interest from eligible individuals, the Board of Selectmen may appoint others in accordance with typical posting requirements. Further, I move to designate members of the Gleasondale Local Historic District Committee as special municipal employees pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 268A. Members must be registered voters of Stowe and agree to comply with state ethics and open meeting law requirements.
Second.
Just one question, Jim. I'm wondering if it is supposed to be Stowe Historical Society or Stowe Historical Commission, because I think that the society is a private group. However, the commission is a town board.
I think it's probably society.
Society or the
Yeah.
commission?
No,
It's 40C says it's the society.
yeah, if there is one.
Right.
Right. It's all these are private organizations. Yeah, no, that's what it's the Historical Society. I mean, worth double checking, and we will comply with state law. But my memory, because I thought the same thing, my memory of looking at 40C is that it was the Historical Society, if there is one.
Valerie, do you have a vivid recollection of
Yes,
that?
yeah.
I think we can take it.
Okay. So, motion made and seconded to appoint a 7-member Gleasondale Local Historic District Committee. So this does not have the word study in it anywhere.
Once a vote to create a study
It
committee
does.
has been
No, it does.
approved, it's all study committee.
In the motion.
Okay, so it's there, but not in the title or in the third paragraph. But so a motion's been made to create a 7-member Gleasondale Local Historic District Study Committee, as set forth by Ms. Frecia. Further discussion, Mr. Burke.
Just briefly, most important thing you guys can do is establish definitively and irrefutably that that farm is the birthplace of butternut squash.
Okay, further
How do you
discussion?
like us now?
Further discussion,
Write
seeing and
that
hearing
down.
none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. And that's unanimous. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So Brian, what do you want? A big concrete butternut
So-
squash down there? Boundary?
Mechanics, Valerie, you'll get, Maureen? So you and Maureen will work on doing the actual posting, and you'll get her some addresses for these organizations. Okay. And sort of guide her, and so this is very particular with its 30-day windows. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your careful work.
Thank you. All right, order, as that guy, once in England says, I want to say Burnklow, but that's our guy. Who? The former Speaker of the Parliament.
Order.
All right, I'm going to go back to the vote and approval of appointment of the Assistant Treasurer. Mr. Town Administrator, do you want to say anything
Yes,
about
my
that?
recommendation in my activity report was that, we discussed this as we began the process of appointing the treasurer collector for one of our own. Several folks who had competed for that job, we checked on to see if they may be interested in the assistant's position. And in fact, Lanny is currently treasurer collector in a smaller community, has been for some time. She brings everything we need to the table, so she'll be able to assist. And the interview that took place, Kathy, now treasurer collector, was impressed with her knowledge and skill set. So I'm relieved with all the appointments I've been in the process of done to find someone to plug in, and we can. And, so I'm making that recommendation. I don't even risk trying to pronounce her last name, so it's spelt there in my activity report.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so procedural, this is a little different than we normally are asked to do, because the collector actually makes the appointment rather than we do. Is that what I'm reading?
Well, but
We
under our,
vote to approve the candidate, and she will make the appointment the following day, is my note here.
that's the process, but our governance agreement, just to be safe, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's a two-step process.
Right.
Okay, that's all, thank you.
I'll start on my right. Ms. Fresha and Mr. Bryan. Anything? Any comments?
I'm delighted that you found someone that is so qualified.
I am as well. Sounds good to me.
Mr. Burke, Mr. Hawks.
Fine with me.
I'm gratified that she's fluent in tax title.
Do I have a
Great
motion?
job. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
She found us.
on the recommendation of the Treasurer's Office, I move to authorize the town administrator to hire Lani Kriasia as Assistant Treasurer for the town of Stowe.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to authorize town administrator to hire Lonnie Kriasha as assistant treasurer for the town of Stowe. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
What's the proper
Aye.
pronunciation?
We've settled on
I hope
Kriasha,
I've made a
So-
gracious guess.
and I think since we just appointed her with Kriasha, if that's not it, she's changing it.
Did the vote I think the vote got interrupted. I did,
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. I thought we, okay. Thank you, Mr. Hawks. And now, a very important appointment, not that that wasn't of a new superintendent of streets, Mr. Town Administrator. You've given us some materials. Resident of Bolton, currently working in, is it Needham, as an assistant?
I provided his resume cover letter. My TIBS report summarizes for you the highlights, and that our working group unanimously supports him as the first candidate, subject to the pro forma reviews, the query checks, references. We even do, online, as everybody does now, you check online media, social media to see. Came back all strong. Did a couple of our own references as well. Speaking for myself, but I believe it would echo what our committee. Extremely thoughtful, professional, articulate, comprehensive in his understanding of matters. He's a 21-year veteran of the Coast Guard, retired, where he was in the public works arena. In Needham, he's been there 11 years, assistant superintendent. And what he brings to this position, which we haven't, in a complete way, skill set and certifications that I've not seen. Starting with, he's a certified procurement officer for the state, under the state's MCPPO program. He's AutoCAD trained with a working knowledge. Right? Next month, he's scheduled to get his BS in construction management from Wentworth. Right? Fully operating within the snow and ice arena.
CDL?
Yeah, the standard stuff, CDL, that we basically look for. So to be truthful with you, I don't know that we could have found a candidate that brings as much to the table, professionally and personally, in my opinion. I've had a number of conversations with him, one-on-one, once the committee agreed unanimously that we should pursue him. So we've been discussing matters that in executive session with regard to terms of employment, but just having both as veterans, I mean, there's always a connection there to some degree, though he is younger than this old man, but some of the can-do attitude, some of the good order and discipline and high expectations, hard work, sacrifice. I think he has those. His references say he does. It's an impressive candidate.
So a question I feel like I need to ask, in light of our experience with Lower Village recently, do you think he would have brought something useful to that experience? And this is, and I do not mean a knock against Mike Clayton. Mike Clayton did everything we asked him to do. But had this gentleman been on board, is there something in his background that you think could have been useful and value added there?
No, because I'll repeat what I've said publicly and privately a great deal. That failure was sown in the design phase of it, in my opinion. I worked for an engineering company years ago, and not one. I know quite a bit about it. And I will tell you this, the only way we could have saved ourselves was hiring a second engineering firm to basically co-engineer through the process what they did. The reason we're suing these folks is they did substandard, grossly substandard, in my opinion, work. And if you go through what we filed in court, by a small degree, maybe earlier in the construction process, until you got out in the field, and until they began to measure quantities and the rest, did it become clear what they had failed to do. And having a clerk of the works of our own wouldn't have done it. You would have had to have been there through design development and or even a peer review. Would have had to have been an extensive one to get the full nature and extent of the failure that they did. And that bid went out, and we were done as soon as that bid came back, in my opinion.
Good answer. All right.
And reasonable people might disagree about that, but I'm happy to take on, you know, I mean, we want to blame somebody, and I'm telling you 95% of the blame goes right where we've got it, and that's where we're going to aggressively pursue our interests and needs.
Mr. Ryan.
I felt a
Ms.
small
Frazier.
curiosity that this gentleman would like to leave what seems like a very engaging position in Needham to work in Stowe, but I speculated to myself that Stowe and Bolton are close by, and perhaps it would be a pleasure to work closer to home.
He certainly suffers like most folks who've traveled that mess going east. That's one of the primary reasons. He also wants to be a superintendent.
Right, he's an assistant.
He also is accustomed to, prior to Needham, is being more involved in the tangible day-to-day operations of the entire. He's in subdivision Needham. Needham's a large town of 30,000, right? And so I think to exercise more, some of this I'm editorializing, more exercise more control in authority on the entire operation, and being able to enact things that he'd like to enact that in Needham it went to somebody above him, and sometimes that never showed up again. This way there's no buffer between. He'll be talking to the town administrator, then to the town voters on matters. Very energetic. The interest and needs of that department are going to be well represented. It's going to take my successor is going to be on their toes, but that's the way you want it.
Absolutely.
Mr. Ryan.
Yep, you know, I was part of the group that picked him, and as Bill said, we unanimously endorsed this gentleman. You know, we had some good folks that applied. However, this guy really had the whole package. Everything from, he's currently a firefighter EMT in Bolton, so he's used to small town stuff. To, you know, one of the things that impressed me is that after 20 years in the Coast Guard and then a 10-year career as an assistant superintendent, he's still getting educated to the point where he's getting his construction management from Wentworth this year. You know, so he's a truck driver, firefighter, EMT, small town stuff, but at the same time, he's also, you know, continued his education. He knows, as Bill said, procurement, other things like that. And, you know, he's going to bring a different set of skills, but he's not going to be above everything else, I don't think, because of the small town stuff. You know, his budget in Needham was, you know, $20 million. So I think he's going to be a great fit, and I think he's very knowledgeable and going to do very well for us.
On my left, Mr. Burke, did you say anything?
Well,
Yes, but I'll
No,
defer to Mr. Hawks.
Burke. Mr. Burke.
no, go ahead. You-
Somebody go.
Well, as the chair directs. First off, I just want to say this looks like another great catch for the town administrator and his working group. They should be congratulated. I just want to ask one thing. Our interim director, Brian Hatch, was he in the mix?
He wasn't, he volunteered in withdrawal, and Brian and I had several conversations, and I believe he had conversations with others, including Tom and the fire chief who know him. I believe Brian feels he's not quite ready for all of the tasks and duties that are required of it, and I pay him tribute for saying so. And when he said that, and after several conversations, he was persuaded that he couldn't do all of the things that I think we're hopeful to have done here. So he'll remain as assistant superintendent, where he's been for, a few years.
And that's it. I had a number of conversations with him, trying to get him just to stay in the mix. But he said that, he felt he still had some things to learn before, as Bill said, he wasn't quite ready.
Then it seems as though he should be congratulated as well. I hope he sticks around. Maybe we'll see him again.
Mr. Hawks.
Noticed his Coast Guard career, which is near and dear to my heart. I certainly was not a career guy. Do you know what his rating was in the Coast Guard? Did that question come up?
Nobody asked him
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm prepared to vote that.
Well, I know it's in his resume, and I'll go tell you.
No, it's not, just
He was
curiosity.
promoted,
Is this the moment I
regularly.
should say that we can keep
Yes,
moving?
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Anything else, Tom?
Just really quickly, the motto of the Coast Guard is Semper Paratus, always ready. And I'm sure he brings that mindset to everything he has done to this point, and I see no reason to doubt that he would be able to do so. And on a separate note, I just want to congratulate, I think this is the last of a string of appointments that we've done tonight, and they have all been sterling quality people. I mean, not that others have not been, but to have so many and packed into one meeting, hats off to you and your assistant committee.
Has been, we still have lieutenant to go,
Okay, well,
but it
I
has been,
will
it has
do
been
that
good.
one.
That'll be sometime in the future.
And for me, it's always the what if, right? So, right, the saying is, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. That happens at times, and clearly, looking at his experience and resume skill set, you could raise that question, and I have in my mind, I'm sure everybody else in the committee did. My feeling is this: what's the worst that could happen to us?
All right, I think we're covering ground that's been covered. Do I have any comments from members of the public? I do see the former superintendent of streets. Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I think the town will be very well served by Steve Nadeau. I was very impressed.
Do you know
We're
him?
lucky to have him apply for the job.
Okay, you know him, I take it.
No, just through the interview process.
Oh, all right, very good. Bill? Thank you.
The only question I had in my mind was, do we need someone with a civil engineering background rather than a procurement officer or a construction manager?
My feeling has been with regard to engineering capacity. Yes, you could, if you wanted to, set as a criteria, you want a PE. My feeling is this, that we do have a PE working for the town through the planning department. We did engage that PE when we needed it. You could have, my feeling is this, if plans and specs, if they could write the majority of plans and specs, but you're not going to find a single engineer that's going to be able to write plans and specs for a school building and then a road drainage project. Most of engineering now is specialized, And if you're gonna put out to bid a set of plans and specs, I wouldn't wanna rely, so site planning, I think we have someone who does that. But if you're looking for an engineer to, and for me it would be either you write plans and specs or you don't. We purchase out for that, and I think on a cost-effective basis, that's the way to go. And I wouldn't let hard cases make bad law in legal, but we had a bad outcome here recently, but it was a professional firm that didn't do it. And I don't think that should cause us to think about hiring an engineer, because you're not going to get what I think you will, meaning to say the full range of the engineering services. It's more efficient and cost-effective to buy them for a particular project and get those who do that routinely for a living. Because that's the other thing. Your engineering skills, with all the things that change, you've got to be constantly exercising the engineering equations, keeping up with the law, and most of what's engineering today is specialized in certain. Bridge structures are different from buildings, are different from lateral construction, which are opening the earth and putting water lines in.
Do I have a motion?
Indeed. I move to appoint Stephen Nadeau as Superintendent of Streets for the Stowe Highway Department. This is for the remainder of a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2020, and subject to reappointment thereafter.
Second.
Motion is
This
made.
should be subject to our successful discussion meeting
Well,
hereafter
Sure.
So...
on terms of employment.
Yes. Let's see, subject to a successful conversation about terms of employment.
So motion's been made and seconded to appoint Stephen Nadeau as Superintendent of Streets for Stowe Highway Department, conditioned on successful negotiation of terms and conditions of employment. This is for the remainder of a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2020, and subject to reappointment thereafter. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, very good.
Can I have 1 second? This is kind of related, but, I think we mentioned Brian Hatch a few minutes ago, and I think he's been doing a fine job keeping everything going in the interim, and I have a lot of faith that he will continue to do so, and he's a great employee. So I think he deserves kudos for stepping in after retirement, which was part of his job, but I think he's been doing a fine job.
I agree.
Cooking along, so.
And
Brian deserves our gratitude.
And I'm discussing with Brian some recompense for
Yeah,
that.
Brian definitely deserves our thanks. He stepped up.
He's a good person, good man.
He is a good guy.
Devoted to the town. He does a lot of good things.
It's a win-win.
All right, I need to move this along. We still have a fair amount of meeting to get through, and we have an executive session. I want Mr. Wrigley to get home before it's tomorrow. So the next item we have on our 7-article warrant is to see if we want to make any recommendations for the special town meeting. I'm going to say, number one, I'm assuming we're going to have a meeting before the special town meeting at a time to be determined, 6:30 or 6:15. Everyone in agreement on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Courtney?
Can we set a time now? 6:15?
Why don't we say 6:15? So we'll have some time to discuss recommendations. Courtney, this is your first time through a town meeting, but you probably know, because you spend time at home watching our meetings, that...
Yeah, but no,
I've never come to a town meeting before.
But you're a big fan of this whole process. The Board of Selectmen does not need to make
I'm
any
still a big
recommendations. We don't need to make recommendations on anything, unlike the Finance Committee or Capital Planning, where they have to make a recommendation one way or the other on certain things. We historically, actually, if we think the advocating board or staff can do fine on their own, we tend to kind of play it by ear and stay out of their way, unless it's near and dear to somebody's heart, unless it's a subject that we've discussed before, feel invested in, unless we think it's something that really requires some leadership from this board on a very loosey-goosey standard. But unlike the FinCom, we don't have to make a recommendation on anything. So the first question always is, what do people want to make recommendations on? So what I propose is we only have 7 articles. I'm just going to call them out, and if anybody wants to make a recommendation, say so, say why, and make a motion, and we'll see if it carries. All right? Article 1, the elevator repair, kind of the reason we're all getting together. I'm going to make a suggestion that we probably want to make a recommendation on this one.
I think we kind of got to do it.
Yeah. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we support Article 1, town building elevator repair.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to support Article 1. I mean, we've been through this from the beginning. We saw Craig's presentation. Most of us saw it twice. Insurance money has been found to take care of any remediation. The figure has dropped from, I think it was 240,000, now down to 80. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of recommending passage of Article 1, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let's take, well, yeah, Article 2. This is the water service, this is providing water to the former fire station on Crescent Street. I don't
know enough about it at this point.
Okay, that's fine.
Actually, we did have, I think, discussion of this at our last meeting. This is to run water up to the old fire station where the cemetery committee is working, and they don't have water. So, you know, this is like the next article, taking care of the town's own. And I think we should take a stand on at least these 2 articles. And I point out Article 2 is $20,000.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Do I have a second? I have a second. Motion made and seconded to support Article 2. Further discussion. I'll say from my own part, I certainly will vote in favor of it. I didn't think it was going to be something we were going to make a recommendation on, but why not? It is town property. There is a town department in there, so maybe that does make some sense.
You either replace the water lines or you keep going
Yeah.
underground and resoldering them.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep this, so, Mr. Hawks,
Yeah, I think this is a general comment, because I've been at a couple of functions recently where, I won't say accosted, but addressed sternly by residents, and trying to, if you'll pardon the expression, clear the muddy water around all of the issues of the PFAS. And I bring this up only because at the PFAS meeting, you and Town Administrator and I attended last Friday.
PFAS is later. PFAS is 3 and 4.
But is this likely, is what we're doing here likely to have any impact, or vice versa, if the state comes in and finds PFAS at this location?
Well,
Or is it
because
separate and independent?
they're going to test that area. It's already on the list, so,
Okay.
but no, this won't, this is just about line replacement.
So this will happen
We're
regardless of
gonna put
anything?
new,
Okay, thank
what,
you.
2-inch line, what is it?
Yeah, 1.5-inch line. It's a service to the building, and we have no.
Can't have water if you don't have a line to it.
We need to replace the lines, 150 feet of 1.5-inch line.
But the fact is, the water for that comes from us.
Right.
So-
Okay,
So we will already
all right,
handle that.
I'll reserve my comment for the next
Yeah,
one.
we'll take Articles 3 and 4 up together, but let's just focus on 2 for now. Ms. Frisha.
I did also hear from somebody recently who sort of said, gee, why do we need to, repair this building? Can't this department be housed elsewhere? Don't we have space in this building? Why are we spending a lot of money on this? And I guess my question is, my understanding is that the foundation under the building, that the building is kind of a wreck. And so my question is, how do we later have some limit in mind of what we're going to spend on a rather derelict building that we probably want to demolish and rebuild? And
Bill, do you want to address that?
Well, it is Brian's handle, so.
Brian.
I understand the point, and yes, there've got to be long-term plans for that building, but bear in mind that it's not just the cemetery committee using that. Equipment from highway and it is stored there. Anybody who comes in there to maintain that equipment, especially over the,
We're going to be housing plow drivers.
I was just gonna get to that too. And when we have to remove snow and ice, the people who have to spend the night in Stowe will be sleeping there, they need water. So I understand your point, but especially given the it's only 20,000, I would recommend.
We also, at the last town meeting, spent money to improve the heat,
Yeah.
correct, Craig?
That's fair.
And frankly, cemetery department has been asking for a building at Brookside for at least the last 2 or 3 years, estimated cost roughly $1 million. And we have been saying, why should we do that when we have, you know, most of your usage is equipment storage, 1 staff member. And for now, at least, the old fire station suits that need. You're right, there comes a point when you stop sinking money into a building like that, but I don't know that structural, I don't know we're done with it yet. I just don't know that we're done with it yet.
Thank you, I just wanted
Yeah.
to go through that quickly again.
So, motion's been made and seconded. Yeah.
Craig, how is this different than what happened a couple months ago? Is it just a continuation of replacing that piece of
It's
plastic?
actually the same line.
Yeah.
It broke again in a different location.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I think I mentioned this, we've been, about every 3 years, we've been repairing that surface since I've been here. So we just need to replace the whole line, and that includes the section under Crescent Street, which has never been touched, so. Give them a new line all the way to the building.
Okay.
Sounds like a good solution.
I saw parts of that back in, I think, July, and it was in pretty rough shape. I know they replaced a piece of it.
So let's try
All
to,
right.
so motion's been made and seconded to recommend approval of Article 2. Further discussion? Seeing, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is, opposed nay? That is approved unanimously. Let's take up Articles 3 and 4 together. These are the 2 PFAS articles, one for $150,000 at the town building and second $57,000 at Hale and Center Schools. Sort of preempt some comments that Mr. Hawks made. We have all raised questions, and I know I did, about how could DEP have told us that we failed a test when the current standard is 70 parts per trillion. In a town building, at least, the one test result we've gotten back has been less than that. I've looked into this a little bit. Although I was uncomfortable at first, I've gotten much more comfortable and I plan on supporting these things for a couple of reasons. It is true that the current standard is 70 parts per trillion. They are about to change their cleanup standard to 20 parts per trillion. And that would, it seems, technically mean that we would have a contaminated site. Wouldn't have to do a cleanup until we tested it again. Not a situation we want to be in. More to the point, and I had a chance to talk to the regional administrator at the Fire Academy last week, they'll be issuing guidance, her estimate was in January, saying that for drinking water, the standard is 20 parts per trillion. Their guidance has some enforceability power, though she made clear she was not threatening enforcement. They anticipate changing their regulations soon thereafter, though that's a long process. But clearly their standard is heading toward 20. I don't think it's going to be heading any lower than that, and I don't think it's going to be coming in above that. In light of the news from the Fire Academy, and if not everybody knows, there's PFAS contamination there at very high levels. I, for one, feel like I know which side of this issue I want to be on. And I want to be on the side of acting swiftly to address this. I don't think, normally I would be in favor of saying, well, you can't make us spend it yet, and we're gonna have a town meeting in 8 months, we'll wait and take it up then. I think there is some value to that. Money now is worth more than money later. But situations change. And right now, I feel like sending the town the message that we understand this problem, and to the extent we can, which is a small extent, we are going to take action. I actually think that this board and this town government needs to start spending some time on this issue in different ways. We need to start keeping people, or helping DEP keep people informed, working with our state representative to possibly find some money to help people with the testing and things like that. On this issue, I personally, I'm just saying, and you can accuse me of being a politician, but given the news that we just got at the fire academy, I'm not concerned about the timing of the, I'm not as concerned as I was a month ago about the timing of the change in standards. Mr. Hawes.
By my raising this question, I'm in agreement with you, especially, I think some of our fears that we expounded on last time around were allayed by the town administrator saying, this is not $1 million fix. This is a small amount of money, and I agree with you about being out front on it. My purpose in bringing it up was I spoke to a couple of people that I highly respect in town, long service, and they are just, it's a confusing subject for us, and we've had the benefit of at least some intelligent advice. I think it's critical that we get a good presentation on all of this, and without having to go a second night at town meeting, because there is a lot of confusion in the population of town that's likely to show up at this meeting, and it is mixed up by on our other border. Hudson is issuing bottled water to people because of the contaminated well. In my neck of the woods down at the lake, the fire academy is only a quarter of a mile from my shallow well, and other people are like that. My daughter has a great saying, it's a great ball of mess. When she was a kid, that's the way she described something like this. And I think, I'm supportive of both of these, and I think we should be out front, but I'm just emphasizing the need to make sure this is presented in a way as concisely as possible at town meeting.
Okay. Mr. Burke.
I laud the chair's willingness to research this issue, reach out to DEP, and to rethink his initial reactions. It's just hard to do something that you aren't convinced is required, but sometimes practicalities just impose themselves on one's decision making, and I don't consider that political. I consider that statesmanship.
You feeling okay? And
It's getting
just
late.
for the record,
It's getting late.
For the record, I didn't reach out to her. She was standing in front of me at a meeting, and I said,
Okay.
I guess I'll ask her. So,
No, the three of us attended a meeting. There were a lot
I
of
didn't turn
questions.
away.
She's
and,
telling
you gave him
you,
a
she
cup of
told you
coffee.
what she's been telling us.
right. And turning to my right, Ms. Freisha.
I'm in support of supporting these two articles because I think they are areas of fair concern in the town, and our being supportive will
Yeah.
make people feel better.
Mr. Ryan.
On Article 3, I'm scratching my head a little bit why it's $150,000 versus $57,000 for both Hale and Center, right? Now, if we're talking PFAS, I would think that, you know, given the size of the different systems, we might be talking 25 for the town building. And then there's other stuff for, you know, pH control and manganese, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Fortunately, we have the building inspector here.
and that's why
Mhm.
I saw him back there, so I
Mr.
figured he
Martin.
may be able to elaborate on this.
Mr. Mark, do I understand about 40,000 of the 150 is for PFAS remediation? Is that-
40,000 is designated, this is an engineer's estimate for the cost of the addressing PFAS for our system. They've identified it at $40,000.
So why 40 for town building and 57 for 2 schools?
No, 150,000.
Well, but only
The amount
PFAS.
designated for the PFAS filtration is 40 grand.
Everything else is pH, manganese removal, things like
I
that.
haven't made a comparison between what they're doing at the schools and what we're proposing to do here. I'm going from the engineer's estimate to do PFAS for our system.
So I'd suggest that at town meeting, Mr. Ryan isn't going to be the only one to raise this. Although in the grand scheme of things, I think $40,000 is not that much money. Someone is going to, people will make the comparison to the schools, so maybe get together and try to have an answer for that for town meeting. Okay. Are we ready to make a recommendation on this? Do we want to wait for the meeting before town meeting?
No, let's do it now.
Okay, let's do it now. Do I have a motion?
I move that we support Articles 2 and 3.
3 and 4.
I mean, 3 and 4. Thank you.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to support Articles 3 and 4 at town meeting. Let me say to Mr. Ryan, if you really want that answer before you can vote, you could either vote against this or abstain, and we could always reconsider the meeting before.
I'm not going to vote against it, but I think I will abstain.
Okay.
Because I'd like to know a little bit more.
I understand that. I know you well enough to know that's what you'd want to do. All right, further discussion. Seeing, hearing none, motion made and seconded to recommend approval on Articles 3 and 4. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and abstentions. Mr. Ryan, that's you.
Abstain.
Okay, 401. Why don't we take Articles, if there's no objection, Articles 5, 6, and 7 as a group. I do this because at the risk of being accused of being judgmental, these are relatively minor articles. I'm on the Complete Streets Committee. I must say, I just read now the Finance Committee's summary of why they're recommending approval. It's very good. That's the reason. Do I have any motion from any selectmen on Articles 5, 6, or 7?
I move them as a group.
Second.
Well, no, do we really want to be standing up on every article and making recommendations on every article? And do we feel like we know, and I'm certainly in favor, I'm just raising this point, do we feel like we know the background on legal and appraisal work for the Boxmill Bridge well enough?
I'm sorry, I thought that's what the chair had suggested.
No.
Fine.
The chair
I
is,
misunderstood the chair.
the chair is just saying,
Who would like to take a vote on either 5, 6, or 7?
does anybody want to take,
Make a motion.
right, does anybody want to take a vote on any of these?
I think at least 7. We have overtime pay that we owe some of our police officers,
And that's directly under our jurisdiction.
Second,
There's no motion.
I took Mr. Ryan's comment.
I'll make a motion that we support Article 7.
Motion made and seconded to support, to recommend approval of Article 7 at town meeting. Further discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? All right, very good. So, we are on record supporting Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. It really does make you wonder what we think of Articles 5 and 6, but not entirely within our jurisdiction, and I personally believe Ari would be better off speaking on it. Okay, good. Thank you. That was productive. We'll still meet. How about we move our meeting to 6:30 on Monday night?
6:45.
6:30.
Let's say 6:30. 6:30 Monday. Great.
I'll show you.
Thank you. And
That'll be fine.
Town Administrator's report, I think you've, well, oh no, a Town Administrator's search process. So we met, and you have at your places a little timeline. And the most important thing here is that the screening committee postings will be put up tomorrow. And I want to draw all your attention to Saturday, February 1st, which again is the date that the selectmen and the moderators, we have in this timeline, the selectmen and moderators will get together on a Saturday and interview probably up to 15 candidates. And as we agreed at the last meeting, the working group will put together a recommended, if we get more than 15 applications, the working group will recommend 15 people to interview. And the selectmen will get a chance to review that and make any adjustments on Tuesday, January 14th. Town administrator will do a formal resignation on January 28th, which kicks off the charter 6-month time period.
So, I'm bad on math. What's your date?
Huh?
What is your retirement date?
6 months from now,
What
July.
is
Last
that?
day of August.
August, thank you.
I mean, he's actually giving 7 months' notice, but it kicks off the charter's 6-month process.
Understand.
So this does not require a vote, but this is something you're going to want to keep handy for the next few months. Okay. Notice there's a big gap from Tuesday, February 11th, which is when we have targeted, that we picked members of the screening committee, obviously with the moderator, until June 5th. And that's when the screening committee does its work. Bill, you want to add anything?
I don't.
Okay, and I don't see the moderator here. Good choice. So, and the moderator drafted what we're loosely calling minutes, and I think he shared them with the newspaper. I don't know.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, that was just really an FYI, but try to keep this close. And
I'm going to put it in my wallet.
I want you to pin it up at your, well, never mind. Does the town administrator have any more of a report beyond the appointments that we did? All right. We can go to liaison reports, keeping in mind that we have an executive session right after that. So I will start with Ms. Frazier.
Nothing exciting.
Capital Planning is meeting tomorrow to make recommendations on the warrant. That's it.
Nothing for me.
LACAC met to discuss the new changes in the FEC regulations. I won't bore everything with them now, especially since the chair will claim he doesn't understand me anyway, but I can provide that information to anyone upon request. And I heard from, I attended ZBA recently, and I heard, and the chair of the ZBA is here, he can correct me if I'm wrong, that there is interest been expressed by a developer on property off of Hudson Road near the old murder farm to develop about either 25 or maybe even 100 acres. Am I correct, Mr. Chair?
Prospectively, yeah.
And they're going to be evaluating that over time. Oh, and don't let me forget, Mark, I found another potential. I think I already mentioned that they have a potential associate member in ZBA once he moves to the town, but I've got somebody in town who you might want to talk to about an associate membership even before that. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Burke. I will entertain a motion to convene an executive session for the purpose of discussing contract negotiations with non-union personnel. We will not return to open session, and a discussion in open session will be detrimental to the town's negotiating position.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to convene an executive session for the purpose of discussing contract negotiations with non-union personnel. This requires a roll call vote. Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Hawks?
Aye.
Mr. Chair votes aye. We're in executive session.
Okay.